Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hazy Sports Podcast. We're back for our Western Conference preview, hot off our Eastern Conference preview. We're getting pumped for the start of NHL season, only a few days away now. Charlie, how'd you enjoy the Eastern Conference preview?
That was a lot of fun. It's it's funny like doing this now. I'm actually more excited for hockey when I felt like I've done more research for hockey than I ever have in, the past year. So I'm ready to rock.
Same here. Well, let's jump right into it. But again, we're going to keep the trivia segment going. So it's my turn this time. It's funny, like the last question, we wrote these separately. My question is kind of in a similar vein to yours. Yours was about the Swedish goal scoring. My question that I had written down was, so last year, Ovechkin had the big goal scoring chase, now holds the record for most goals in the regular season. My question to you is, which Russian has the second most career NHL goals?
Okay. I think I have a guess in mind, but we'll give the listeners. I think my guess is probably too obvious, but
Well,
but we'll
well,
we'll give the listeners time, and I don't think anyone's got one of these yet, right? Out of you and
no,
I.
we haven't. We've been close and some good guesses, that's for sure, but nobody's really nailed it so far. So we'll see if you can get it this time. I think this one is gettable, so we'll see how you do, and we'll give the listeners a chance. Stay tuned to the outro, and we'll give the answer in our wrap up section. Lots to cover here, so we'll cut the chit chat and jump right into it. I'm leading the way. We're kicking things off with the Central Division, same format as we did with the Eastern Conference. We're starting from worst to going to first based on points from last year. And of course, worst in the Central Division, we had the lowly Chicago Blackhawks, 61 points. Obviously a rebuilding phase for them. My big question for you is, where does Connor Bedard go from here? Obviously, started his career with high hopes as becoming the face of the NHL. Had a pretty good rookie year. Took a bit of a step back last year. What are your thoughts on the trajectory of Connor Bedard?
I think he is going to take a huge step this year. Like there was all the noise about not going to the World Championships. Does this kid actually want it? All that crap. I've seen a few, like obviously the preseason stuff, but then a few clips of the training and Blackhawks practice, and he looks absolutely dialed in. I think you're going to see a pretty significant jump in his output this year. Obviously, the team's going to suck. Like, it is what it is, but I think he's going to make a major step this year.
I'm kind of on board with you there. I think he's been in a pretty dysfunctional setup for a while with a lot of turnover there in Chicago and hasn't had like the same opportunity to thrive as some of the other young guys, but they've got a pretty good young nucleus here now, and I think he's keeping receipts, as they say, and hearing a lot of the critics. You try to not put too much stock into the highlights you're seeing at him at practice and the off-season training, but he does look like he's taken it to another level.
And there was all the talk about them, Donato was going to get traded, all this stuff, but they re-signed him. So he's finally got, consistent line mates. And I think he's poised for a big year.
Well, in terms of the team overall, what are you seeing from them? Do they take another step forward, or are they still kind of in the basement of the league, just
I,
waiting for this prospect pool to kind of grow into what they need to be?
I think they're going to be in the basement again. I do like the signing Spencer Knight. Like, you have a potential goalie there, and they have some pieces they can move if they want to accelerate the rebuild kind of thing. But I don't expect a whole lot out of this team other than you're going to see some Bedard highlights. That's about it.
Yeah, they should be slightly more interesting than last year. Apparently, Nick Lardis was looking pretty good in camp. May play his way onto the team. That could be just a
That would be
fun
cool.
player to watch. They signed Frank Nazar in the offseason. Sam Rinzel on defense was the Big Ten player, D-man
Yeah,
of the year. Another good prospect there. And then, of course, their number 2 overall pick, Levshinov, still seems to, have tons of potential, but still seems to be a ways away from kind of growing into that steady number one D man. But yeah, Chicago, probably not a team I'd put on the too often on the center ice package, but we'll just watch all the Bedard highlights on Sports Center.
That's right. Heading off to Nashville now, predicted to have around 81.5 points. They went crazy in free agency last year. Nothing worked. This year, Barry Trotz and his no neck decided to reel it in a little bit. And, the biggest signing was Nick Hague from Vegas, who I do like. Not a lot of moving the needle here. I guess my question is, will Gavin McKenna be rubbing elbows with Morgan Wallen down on Music Road?
Well, that's a good perspective. Yeah, that I definitely see Nashville in the bottom of the league there again. So I think they'll be right there in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, and you get a guy like that that kickstarts the rebuild pretty fast.
Could you imagine being an 18-year-old millionaire in Nashville? I think I would have a hard time staying focused.
It'd be fun, but yeah, I don't know if it'd be good for the career longevity. But yeah, we'll see. I had Nashville as kind of one of the least interesting teams to follow this year. At least with the Blackhawks, there's some good young players where you're kind of like interested to see. Not that Nashville doesn't have any good young players coming up, but a lot of their key guys are sort of in the twilight of their career.
The worst part, too, is they signed all those guys to such long-term deals last year that they're not even movable. Like, you're stuck with Stamkos, you're stuck with Marchessault. Like, it's puzzling, but I don't know. I don't expect much.
Well, we'll move on to Utah here. I'm up next with them, and this is a team that seems to be moving in the right direction. I guess my big question for you is, will the JJ Peterka trade pay off? Because obviously they got the best player in the deal. They had to give up some pretty significant depth pieces in Kesserling and Doan, who we talked about. But if Peterka continues on his trajectory, usually the team that gets the best player overall ends up winning the trade. I think Utah's kind of an exciting future powerhouse that's maybe a few years away.
I'm with you. I think they could be kind of a sneaky kicking around the playoffs towards the end. They finally got a logo now and a jersey, which I actually really like. I wasn't sold on the name, but I do like the way the shirt looks. I agree. I think they're an interesting team. The problem is I don't know who's falling out of the playoffs in the West right now, but I think Utah definitely. I think they got a pretty good deal with Peterka. But they need their guys like, your Clayton Keller and your Logan Cooley to keep improving. But I think they're going to be a tough out. And it seems like they've got a pretty decent home ice advantage there. Like, their fans seem into it.
Yeah, one thing I found sometimes with expansion teams, it takes me a while to feel any sort of emotional connection to them. Like, when I think of the Kraken, we'll get to them later, but I feel like nothing. I feel like no emotional investment. There's something about this Utah team, whether it's the Utah market and the enthusiasm that we've seen from the fan base, the kind of branding around the Mammoth that's cool,
And the owner.
exciting young players that they have, the ownership. Yeah, there's something kind of fun where, I'm kind of rooting for this Utah team more so than I have for other expansion teams in the past.
And if you get a chance to listen to the owner, like I know he was on Spit and Chicklets last year, and any interview he does, like he is all in on the hockey side, and it's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah, so we'll stay tuned. I think the Keller, Cooley, Gunther top line, if they hit their potential, which I think there's a good chance that they will, that could be one of the better top lines in the whole conference. So
For sure.
we'll see. They're probably, like you said, it's pretty crowded around that wild card spot. So it could be 50-50 whether they get in there or not. But I think the future's bright, and over the next few years, that's going to be a fun team to follow.
All right, we're moving on to the St. Louis Blues. They had 96 points last year. They're actually predicted to take a bit of a step back at 92.5. I love this team. Like, I think this team is a massive sleeper. They're minus 115 to make the playoffs, which I think is insane because I think, like, up and down this lineup, they might be one of the deepest teams in the West. They got the coach, like he got them absolutely clicking last year. So my question to you is, we're seeing Binnington going into an Olympic year. Are we going to see a massive Binnington year and really push this St. Louis team up towards the top end?
I think so. Yeah, I was very bullish on the Blues too. I had that noted down as like they've got the great pieces. They've got depth up and down the lineup. Binnington on his at his best can be
Steal
a
it.
goalie that can, obviously he's already shown it. You can win a cup with him. You can win a Four Nations with him. So he's got the pedigree. He's a little up and down at times, but to me, it's the Jim Montgomery factor. As soon as he came over there last year, they turned the ship around. I believe they were like, from the time he came over, they were one of the best teams in the league during that period. They really should have beat the Jets in the playoffs, kind of a complete sort of fluke at the end there, but
Yeah,
they're like literally seconds away from beating the Jets in the playoffs, and to have them taking a step back, I just don't see it.
I don't
They're one of the
either.
teams I'm most excited about in the
I
West.
think if they had Holloway in the playoffs, they beat the Jets, and they just locked up Cam Fowler. Like, I minus 115 to make the playoffs seems like absolute free money. And if you've been following my NFL picks, you know that I'm on the
Oh,
cutting edge of betting. But minus 115 seems crazy to me. Like that, I think they're in for sure.
same here. I have them right at the top of the conference
Yeah.
personally. So maybe stealing a little thunder from our buying and selling segment later, but but that's okay. No, we're excited about the Blues and what Jim Montgomery's got going on there. Finishing 1 point ahead of the Blues last year was the Minnesota Wild. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it already, but I can't have any other big question than what's going to happen with Kirill Kaprizov there because, if he stays, he is that franchise guy that you can build a contender around. They've got other good pieces there already. They went toe to toe with Vegas in the playoffs last year, so they got some good playoff experience. If he goes though, I don't know where you go from here. You got Zeev Buium coming in as a potential like Norris Trophy caliber defenseman in the next few years. So you keep Kaprizov there. I think you've got a potential contender to work with.
Me personally, I would probably move on from that guy because if you got to assume the Hall coming back would be pretty significant for Kaprizov, and you've already got Boldy, Faber, and Bouillon sitting there. Maybe you bring in one or two guys plus some picks, and I think the way to go is to probably move on if he's not going to sign. But this is a team I think is falling back in the West myself because I think this thing's going to hover over them until something gets done.
I think the thing I keep thinking about is like Kaprizov was injured, for a good chunk of the last year, but anytime he was in the lineup, they were like so dangerous. But you're right, it's kind of puzzling what's going on there, whether he even wants to be there or not.
Yeah, I personally I would move on, but it is hard to say goodbye to a guy who's such a force for sure.
Okay, well, sticking with me here, coming in at 102 points last year's the Colorado Avalanche. Just a heartbreaker against the Stars in that first round for them. They appeared to have all the pieces to make a good run in the playoffs, but my big question is, what do you get out of Gabe Landeskog this year? Obviously, that was kind of an emotional return last year. They get the captain back end of the year. I'm curious to see if a full off season of health and a full regular season with the captain and the guy that was the, providing the leadership on that last cup run, if that's the difference maker that they need to kind of make a run this year.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to follow. Now that he could have a full training camp and be with the team the whole year. I still look at this team as they between them, Dallas, Edmonton, and Vegas, I think they're one of the top contenders coming out of the West. Like, how could you not be with the firepower? It's just the goaltending again, right? Everyone shits on Edmonton's goaltending. This is another team that's got suspect goaltending, and they'll obviously be able to go toe to toe with anybody offensively, but I'm just not sure the goaltending is going to be there either. I don't know. We talked about it in the Eastern Conference preview, but this is another team that I think could be in the Sorokin sweepstakes. Like because they've already said that Natchez is not interested in re-signing there, so maybe he's going to be part of a package going the other way. And if that was, what happens, that definitely pushes them over the edge. But we'll have to see how that plays out. Heading on to Dallas, 106 points last year. They're slated for 106.5 this year. I think, new coach, full season of Rantanen, two legit Norris candidates in Heiskanen and Thomas Harley. So my only question is it Stanley Cup Finals or bust for this team? Like, can they get over the hump with a new voice and a team that's absolutely loaded?
It's a great question. I think they can. I think they also might not. Really good analysis there. But yeah, I think for me, it's like some of these top teams, they're so close. It kind of comes down to a coin flip, and it just comes down to these minute calls or bounces that go your way or don't. But for sure, the Stars, the depth on that team, the like top level talent is on par with anybody. If Ottinger kind of gets it rolling and doesn't get embarrassed mid playoffs,
Like,
that probably would help.
looking back on that series with Edmonton, like Dallas was clearly the better team, and DeBoer just went on complete tilt.
That's still strange when I think back. I remember watching that game and I'm like, didn't know what's going on. Ottinger's going back in the net. He's calling him back out. Then he's calling him out after the game. It was,
Just bizarre.
a real fumbling of that situation. But there's no reason to think, the Dallas Stars won't be right there, especially regular season. It's hard to see anybody kind of beating them out from a regular season points total. Well, we'll shift gears to the one team that did beat them out last year, and that's Winnipeg Jets. They finished with 116 points to win the President's Trophy. Not a ton of changes. Obviously, they lost Ehlers to free agency. They bring in Jonathan Toews. That's my big question. What does Jonathan Toews have left in the tank? Obviously, he was, the main leader and the captain of that Blackhawks dynasty. He's getting a little long in the tooth, hasn't been on the ice in a couple of years. How optimistic are you that Jonathan Toews can come back in there? Winnipeg, hometown Winnipeg guy. Can he give them an emotional lift and elevate them from a leadership standpoint?
I hope so. Like, I'm so glad he's back. I obviously cheer for a Western Conference team, but I'm excited that he is actually back. And if that guy can be even 60% of what he was as your third line center, that's a pretty decent ad for what's he getting, like $2 million? Like, I think that's kind of what this team was missing last year, a little bit of a stabilizing voice in the room and guy who's been through it. And I think Hellebuck sort of got the monkey off his back, with that sort of fluky first round series. He didn't play great in the next round, but you got to lose sometimes before you can, you got to go through the wars. And I think they're going to be right there again. And I hope Toews can stay healthy.
I think it's a great news story. He's like just a guy that was a class act, played hockey the right way, and was ashamed to see his kind of career shorten with the way it was. So from just a good news story, I hope he does. I'm a little skeptical in terms of guys in their mid-20s that haven't played competitive hockey in 2 years. The kind of bounce back that they could have, but we saw with Landeskog. I mean, he's a little younger, but Toews.
But it's kind of the perfect team, right? Like, he doesn't need to be a factor, and I don't think a lot's going to be expected of him.
and they can ease him in slowly. They can start him like lower down and in the lineup, and as he gets more
Exactly.
confidence and builds up his stamina, he could be peaking for the playoffs. I see Winnipeg a little bit like the Capitals, where I think everything went perfect for them in the regular season. So I definitely see them having a step back from the 116 points, but still a firm playoff team. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Again, the Western Conference is so tough. We haven't even got to the Pacific division,
Yeah.
but just between the Avalanche, the Stars, and the Jets there, those are three kind of juggernauts and the Blues that we're very high on. So there are kind of four teams in that division that are all going to be tough to contend with come playoff time. Okay, that wraps up our Central Division. Now we're going over to the Pacific. I got the first two. Some real doozies to start things off with our San Jose Sharks, 52 points. Historically bad over the last two seasons. They're the first team to finish with less than 100 points over a two-season total in a long time. But a lot going for these guys in terms of some of the most exciting prospects in hockey right now. I feel like my big questions are kind of similar here, where they're all a lot of them are player related. But for these bad teams, that's kind of the way it is. And for me, it's like, will Macklin Celebrini continue his progression is becoming the face of the NHL? A lot of people are talking about him with his 200-foot game, the maturity beyond his years that he is showing for his level of play, his ability to compete well and hold his own in the world championships. The needle's high on this guy. The expectations are high. What are your thoughts on Macklin Celebrini?
Well, just before I get to that, imagine if you were in a coma for the last 8 years and the first thing you do when you wake up is look at the Sharks roster. Carey Price, John Klingberg, Jeff Skinner. You'd probably be thinking, holy shit, what the hell happened to this team? No, I think Celebrini's like obviously a superstar in the making. Like everything you read, how he's just nonstop. He just wants to improve at every facet. And I think he's going to be fun to watch this year. One other Shark that I hope he makes the team. I haven't heard anything yet, but Sam Dickinson. I saw a bunch of one of their preseason games. I think he had 3 assists, and that guy is so good at quarterbacking a power play and just moving the puck. So it'll be interesting to see how that team progresses with all these pieces. Like they are absolutely friggin' loaded with
Yeah,
prospects. It's
you got
just how you bring them all along.
obviously Michael Misa, number 2 pick, Sam Dickinson. If those two make the team, that would be pretty cool. If they don't make the team, the Canada's World Junior team could be pretty friggin' dominant this year. Then you got Eklund, Will Smith, and Celebrini. So in terms of like their top 6 sort of young guys, and then they got Askarov in net
Askarov,
as
and then they
yeah.
got that Casper Haltunen who played for the London Knights, who all he did was score hat tricks in the playoffs. Like they're absolutely loaded.
They're loaded, but the bottom falls out pretty quick after those
Yeah.
top end guys. Like, their depth on D is pretty light, and their forwards drop off pretty quick.
But if this friggin' team adds Gavin McKenna, like they gotta make the playoffs next year, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah. That's what's so exciting. Like if I was a San Jose Sharks fan, I'd be over the moon because they're going to be bad again this year,
yeah,
but they're going to be fun to watch. And
this is
all these young guys are going to get all this experience. You're still going to get another good draft pick, and they're going to be another powerhouse in the next 3 to 4 years.
and this is why it's so crazy that we talked about it already, but that Carey Price deal allows them to trade any of these veteran guys now at the deadline, stay above the floor, and you can add more picks or more prospects. Like Mike Greer is doing a hell of a job there, even though I hate adding contracts of guys that are never going to play for your team.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I had them. My takeaway is the most interesting bad team to watch. So
Exactly.
they'll be fun, even though they're not going to be great. Moving on in the Pacific Division, we have the Seattle Kraken. My big question here is, why should anybody care about this team? Like, honestly, there's no identity to this team. It's in a non-traditional hockey market. There's no players you can really hang your hat on, like Shane Wright. There's a few guys there, but um, I just I don't have much to say. I was trying to come up with an interesting angle for the Kraken, and as I was reading more about them, I'm just like, I don't give a fuck about this team. I am never gonna watch them play this year. I'm I don't know. Can you spin the Kraken into something interesting for the listeners?
The only thing positive I can say about them is they did release one of the best jerseys. I don't know if you saw it, but it's
No.
actually got some it's their third jersey or alternate jersey, and it's all black, and it actually has some glow in the dark elements to it, and it's really nice. Like, they've actually, they had their winter classic jersey, which was an absolute home run too. So besides putting out nice jerseys, no, I'm with you. I don't see what the draw is in this team. I will say they just sent Jake O'Brien back to Brantford, which I'm happy for, because I'll be going to see the Bulldogs in a couple days. So I'm glad to see he's back. But no, I'm with you. I could give two shits about anything this team does, and I don't really get what they're doing.
Yeah. So, well, let's keep it rolling then.
All right, so we're heading down to California, and with the Anaheim Ducks, who 80 points last year, they're looking at 83 and a half this year. They're another team that's loaded with these young, talented players: Leo Carlson, Cutter Gauthier. I'm expecting Lucas Dostal to take a legit number one role now that Gibson's gone. Um, I got two questions for you. Are the Ducks ready to take a leap? And over under on the amount of times we'll hear, should Joel Quenneville be coaching in the NHL?
I had the Ducks as a team I'm intrigued by, kind of like San Jose in terms of like an exciting prospect pool. They're probably like a year or two ahead of San Jose.
Yep.
So yeah, I kind of had them as a bubble playoff team, and I'm gonna say yes. They take the next step, and I think they get into the playoffs.
They did just
The
sign
Bucks.
Mason McTavish
Oh,
too, so that was a big piece that they were wondering if he was going to get moved somewhere else, but he just signed. So I like what they're doing. I don't have them in the playoffs yet, but I like the vets they brought in, and I think they got a bright future for sure.
now, what's your take on the Joel Quenneville? Is it just because of his connection with the Chicago
Yeah,
stuff that was
that's the
going
whole
on?
thing. So
Okay.
like the first preview article that I read about the Ducks was whether or not you think Joel Quenneville should be coaching in the NHL anymore. That was the headline, and I'm like, holy fuck, we're doing this already. But
Yeah.
he's a good coach, and everybody has a skeleton in their past.
Yeah, we'll keep the morality discussions to a minimum here on the Hazy podcast because
That's right.
that's above our pay grade here to discuss those things. But definitely Quenville, he's got a proven track record. He's got a knack for bringing the best out of these young, talented players. So I think from a coaching perspective, he's going to be a perfect fit in there in Anaheim. I love Leo Carlson. That's good to hear that they got Mason McTavish uh, coming up
Locked
and
up.
just some exciting young players on that team. So that'll be fun to watch.
All right, sticking out west, we got the Vancouver Canucks. 90 points last year. They're predicted right around the same range. I got a couple, I don't know. This is another one of those teams where I didn't really understand their off-season plan. It felt like they were just kind of doing anything. Is it ever good when you hear insert player's name has added 10 pounds of muscle to, like, and that's in terms of Elias Pettersson? Like, that's not his game. I don't know why he's doing that. But my only question from the Canucks standpoint is, did Quinn Hughes ever call Jim Rutherford back, and has that relationship been mended?
I'm guessing no. I'm guessing he hasn't called him back. There's not a lot to hang your hat on with the Vancouver Canucks. I think the Quinn Hughes discussion is going to be a distraction, and it's
Massive.
it's like the Canadian media markets. It's kind of like reminded me of what they did with Marner, where they're going to ask him they're going to drive him crazy, asking him every fucking day about these, whether he's staying, whether he wants to play with his brothers, that he's going to get to the point where I just need to get out of here because I can't answer these questions anymore. Or if you just give the guy some space, like when you see him on the interviews and he's getting asked about it, you can just tell it's soul sucking giving these answers to these questions. And he's going to have the whole year. It's going to be a complete distraction. And it's like, yeah, these big media markets, they tend to drive the stars out just by overwhelming them with all the questions and attention.
I agree. All right, sticking in Canada, we got the Calgary Flames, 96 points last year, bit of an overachiever. And next to Washington, I believe this is the biggest drop points-wise by a team predicted. They're predicted for 81.5 points this year, which is kind of crazy. They didn't really do anything this offseason, which I thought was kind of puzzling. They locked up Dustin Wolf, which I love. I think that's an absolute steal. But my question is, like, why didn't you try to improve when you had a bubble playoff team?
It's a good question. I'm thinking the same thing with the Flames. Like they signed Connor Zary. He's a nice prospect. Getting Wolf is good long-term. Calgary's another team I just don't have a great feel for. It's one of those teams that doesn't seem to have like a real identity or direction that they're going. That's where these teams kind of fall into different categories. You have your classic contenders. You've got your teams that are going for the McKenna sweepstakes, and the lower the points, the better. And then you have the teams that have like a really good core group of young guys that you just can see them taking the next level. And then you have these like treading water teams.
8 middling teams. Like, obviously the Blue Jays have an awesome season this year, but for so many years they were just middling, like just happy to be there and not making a big move or not, bottoming out and starting over. And the middle is where it kills your team for the next 10 years. Like, either you got to pick.
And I don't get why more teams don't commit to that. I'm not, my wings have kind of been in that zone for a while too, so I feel the pain.
All right, we're sticking in Alberta with my team, the Edmonton Oilers. So we got Matt Savoy, Mangiapane, Isaac Howard, David Tomasek. They're younger, but are they actually better? That's my question. And have they done enough to keep 97 in Alberta?
Well, I'm going to defer to you to say whether they're better or not, because you're following them closer than me. I think it's a bit of a coin flip. It's tough to say until the season gets started. As far as McDavid goes, honestly, I don't see any chance he signs somewhere other than Edmonton. Personally, I can't envision that, but how long he makes them wait, whether he takes a little bit of a discount from what he could get to kind of help them put a better team on the ice. I have this feeling he's maybe going to wait until the trade deadline to put pressure on him to do something with it. I doubt he'll take the max that he could possibly get, just because that would like negatively impact their chance of putting together the best cup contending team. But you're closer to all this stuff than me, so where's your head at?
So preseason, I've loved what Matt Savoy's done. Like, he's looking great. He's looking like he can probably be a maybe not top 6, maybe eventually towards the end of the year he can get into the top 6, but he's playing a complete game finally. Mangiapane's he's a 30 goal scorer. I think he has a role in the top 6 for sure. Isaac Howard preseason has had some flashes, but he's not, you can't expect him to just jump right in. This David Tomasek, he's a 29-year-old. He's been a professional in Europe. Big body, looks like he's going to be an awesome bottom 6 guy. I don't know that they're better, but I mean, you went to the finals the last 2 years. As long as you're even par, you're still good. I expect them to get off to a much better start than they have for the last 2 years. They look a little bit more focused. It's obviously the goaltending. Like, I don't know how you haven't improved there, but they don't see a problem with it.
I see it more of a lateral move, but where I see them taking a step forward is just another cup run the playoff experience that the core
Yeah.
guys are getting has to count for something.
And
And
you're
doing
getting
that,
82 games of Wallman too, right? Which I thought he was awesome down the stretch.
but ultimately it is going to come down to goaltending again. And I think the team will be better just because of their experience of having that core group go to the Cup Finals 2 years in a row. But it wasn't like it was all bad from Skinner
No,
or
definitely.
Pickard last.
Skinner takes so much abuse, but what other goalie in this first 4 years has made it to a conference final, lost to the champs, and lost in 2 finals? Like, it's a pretty impressive run for a guy who supposedly sucks.
He probably gets more blame than he deserves, but at the end of the day, that's probably what people are going to focus on again.
And the McDavid thing, like, let's say it goes south and he asks for a trade. What does a trade even look like? Because any team you're going to, you're making significantly worse by going there.
Can you see him in another uniform? Can you see him moving away from Edmonton? Like, I know he's doing the whole negotiation thing, but could you actually see him moving to another team?
No, and the only thing that I was thinking about, like, I don't know, let's say Carolina or Toronto actually does somehow pull this off in a signing. It almost seems like a Kevin Durant joining the Warriors kind of scenario where, you're going to win the title, but did you really make an impact on an already, contending team that might have won without you? Like, I think he wants to do it here because he's not on his own, but this is his team. I don't see him leaving, but I wouldn't blame the guy if he does say I'm out.
I think you're up now with
Yep.
their familiar foe.
Yeah, so the LA Kings next, 105 points last year. They're predicted to have a bit of a drop off at 97 and a half. You got the Kopitar retirement hanging over them this year. My questions are, do you think the Kopitar thing will give them a Capitals type boost? And number two, what the hell is Ken Holland doing with the bringing in old, slow defensemen and I think kind of messing with a team that was kind of on the cusp of taking the next step?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the Kopitar question. I think they get a little bit of a bump from that. That's a good news story. I don't think it'll be anything like the OV goal chase where like the
No.
whole team is rallying around for this one moment. So yeah, they might get a little bit of a bump there. I do think they got worse in the off season on defense, especially losing Gabrikov, one of the better defensive defensemen in the league.
Insane.
And yeah, so I think they'll be there.
If Ken Holland, we got to investigate whether or not him and Cody Ceci got something going on because he seems to love that guy and he's not a good defenseman. I don't know what he's thinking. I think he's screwed this team up already.
Last year was probably a best case scenario for what you're going to get out of the talent. They're one of those teams that has a lot of depth, but no top tier guys on that team. So they seem to have really good chemistry, but ultimately, I don't think they have the difference makers to make a real run. Okay, let's finish out the Western Conference with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And did they make any moves in the offseason? Did they pick up any free agents we should be talking about?
I know they lost Nick Hague.
I think they got another guy on there. Oh, right. Yes, they signed Mitch Marner. I think I've heard something about that. Yeah, my question is, can Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel combine to be the most electrifying line in the NHL?
I think Mitch is going to fit in perfectly right there. I'm looking forward to whenever the Leafs play in Vegas because I think the building will be like 90% Canadians booing Marner in his home arena every time he touches the puck. I have no hate for Mitch Marner. I think this is going to be great for Mitch. He can just play his awesome regular season game and put up unbelievable points. And I think he's going to do well there. I don't know. I think it's a steal for them.
That's kind of why I had that question. I just see him and Eichel on that power play together, and I'm assuming they're going to be put on the same line together. I think what I'm most interested is not what Marner does in the regular season. He's going to get his points for sure. I'm curious to see if we get a different version of Marner in the playoffs.
I don't think so. I think
Maybe that's optimistic. I guess I thought just maybe being at a Toronto surrounded by more guys that have got the job done in the playoffs might give him a little boost and allow him to kind of play a role like he did in the Four Nations. But you're probably right. It's probably going to
I
be a lot of the same old Mitch.
he'll definitely have a lot less death threats if they do end up getting put out. But you know what? I think he's going to do good. I think that team's going to take a bit of a step backwards just because they have lost some depth pieces and Peter Angelo is obviously gone now. So I think they're a lock for the playoffs, but I don't see them being at the top next year. But I think offensively they're going to be tough to beat.
Okay, well, that wraps up our Western Conference summary. Let's go to our conference summary now. Market watch. Do you have a? Are you buying or selling, or where do you want to start with this one?
All right, I'm going to start with buying. I'm going to be buying the Anaheim Ducks. I don't know that they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're definitely a team on the rise. You know, the additions of some veteran guys, plus the emergence of Dostal and, you know, Quenville being there as a voice in the room. I think they're going to be a tough out, and I think that's a team to watch out for in the near future.
I'm going to buy the Utah Mammoth. I kind of talked about it before. That top line, if they hit on all cylinders, could be one of the top lines in the conference. I think they're kind of a bubble team, but I just see the potential ceiling for that team being higher than some of the other bubble teams. So I'm buying. Still a couple years away from being a true contender, but I think they have the potential to maybe surprise some people this year.
Like it. All right. As far as selling goes, I kind of already talked about it, but I am selling the LA Kings. I just don't know what the plan is there. Like I agree with you. They were right on the cusp of potentially putting Edmonton out, and now they've decided to get older and slower in key positions, and I just don't see it. I think they probably still make the playoffs, but they're significantly worse today than they were last year.
Yeah, and I'm going to sell. Who was I going to sell? Oh, yeah, I'm selling the Vancouver Canucks. You know, Tocchet couldn't get out of town fast enough. They're pretty much driving Quinn Hughes out of town. Apparently, we've got, a beefed up Elias Pettersson, but I just feel like the energy and the culture there and weird stuff going on with the owner. They're kind of already that bubble type of team. So I see them taking steps backwards before they're taking steps forwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with some bold predictions.
All right, my bold prediction is Mitch Marner will easily pass 100 points this year and be in the conversation for the Art Ross Trophy.
Well, great minds think alike.
Oh, no.
My bold prediction was Marner leads the league in points. That's very bold. That would probably take some missed time for McDavid, but I could see him being right there in the top three. As you were saying that, I was trying to think of a different bold prediction, but I couldn't come up with one on the spot. So yeah, I had Marner. What about
All
a
right.
breakout player?
So my breakout player, oddly enough, is on the team that I was selling. I think Quentin Byfield's going to take another big step this year. 23 goals, 54 points last year, and I love the way that guy plays, and I think he should easily hit the 30 goal mark this year, and I think he's going to be a breakout guy for LA.
Yeah, good call. He looked great in the playoffs last year. My breakout player was Frank Nazar for the Blackhawks. So he finished the season really strong. They signed him to a pretty nice contract in the offseason. He led the U.S. in scoring at the World Championships in their gold medal effort. So kind of showing he can hang with the top-notch talent. And he's playing in a Chicago team where he's going to get plenty of power play time, plenty of 5-on-5 time, definitely be in a top six role. So a guy that kind of came onto the scene somewhat out of nowhere last year, and I think is just going to continue that trajectory this year.
That's a good one.
Okay, you feel it getting hot in here, Charlie? The seat's warming up here. Who we got on the hot seat?
I kind of think we might have the same one for this one too, but I went with the Edmonton Oilers front office. You're on the precipice here of losing arguably the greatest player of all time, and the clock's ticking to make this team better. And I don't know how they're going to do it because the assets aren't there, the cap room isn't there, and I just need to see how they possibly work this magic.
Things are definitely getting hot there in Edmonton in the front office, but I actually went with a player on my end, a guy we've kind of talked about, but Elias Pettersson. Obviously, he signed a huge contract. Basically ran JT Miller out of town. They wanted him to stay in Vancouver during the offseason to train. He took the first plane back to Stockholm and got out of there. Apparently, he's put on this 10 pounds of muscle. And I think with all that, and I think he's going to need to get back to his former all-star top-tier level for them to have any chance of Quinn Hughes staying there. So I think, him living up to that contract, him being pivotal in keeping Quinn Hughes there and showing that the Canucks chose the right guy over JT Miller just puts a lot of pressure on him, and I think he's got to have a bounce back year this year. Okay, so that wraps up our conference summary. Now let's sort of step back, take a look at the big pictures. Who's going to make the playoffs here? Let's do like we did with the Eastern Conference and say, like, who are the no-doubters that you can kind of pencil in for the playoffs?
So you got to think Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado for sure, right? I think we can agree on that.
Yep.
LA, I'm a little skeptical. Minnesota, I think, falls out.
We both like St. Louis.
Yeah, I love St. Louis. I think they're a lock for sure.
So they're our sixth team. Yeah, so we've got 2 spots left.
I kind of think Anaheim could push the Kings. Those are probably my next 2 in, and then maybe a Utah on the cusp as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. Definitely not Chicago. Definitely not Nashville.
No.
I don't see, definitely not the Sharks or the Kraken. I think the Canucks and the Flames aren't getting it done. So yeah, really comes down to the Kings, the Ducks, and Utah for those last 3 spots. I'm gonna say the Kings take a step back and we see Anaheim and Utah in there.
I think Utah's in. 2. I agree. I think Utah's getting in.
Anaheim, that would be sort of a bit of a surprise, but okay, that's good. That wraps up the Western Conference. We've successfully covered all 32 teams here, Charlie. I feel like we're ready for the regular season to start. Hopefully that translates into better betting success than we've had in the NFL so far. Before we get to our Stanley Cup predictions, though, let's talk awards. We're going to go through the Hart, Art Ross, Rocket Richard, Norris, Selke, and Calder with some of our predictions. I've left the Lady Bing on because I don't know why they're still giving that trophy away. Do you even know who won it last year?
No idea, but I was looking at the awards, and I think this is an absolute lock of a bet. Kopitar in his last year, Lady Bing plus 600.
Oh, I like that.
I think he's going out with something, and that's probably the only thing, he's going to win. I can't see him battling for the Selke.
Yeah.
At plus 600, it's worth throwing a bit of money on it.
Yeah, I like your thinking there. Okay, well, we'll both go on that one. We'll cover that one. We'll start with the Bing and kind of then work our way from there. Let's go Hart Trophy. Let's start with the big one here.
All right. So obviously McDavid's the top dog. Yeah. Plus 175. My best bet for this one would be Nate McKinnon at plus 430. I think he's going to have a big bounce back year, and I think he's going to be right in the running. But if you want a long shot, and we've already been kind of blowing smoke up his ass, but Mitch Marner plus 4,500 to win the Hart Trophy. Like it's worth just throwing a couple bucks on that.
I mean, Eichel was in the discussion last year. I think he was nominated for it. So, it's not, who's to say it couldn't happen for Marner. One of the guys I had as sort of an outside chance, and it might be hard because his team's not going to be that great, but Pastrnak, last year he had 107 points, and I think the next closest guy on his team had 56 points. If Boston happens to get into the playoffs and Pastrnak has another good year,
monster year.
He's kind of a long shot discussion, but I like the McKinnon pick as well. I think
At plus 430, you can't go wrong there.
okay, Art Ross, we talked about you can't pick McDavid because barring an injury, he's probably got that sewn up. So let's say like outside of McDavid, who leads the league in scoring?
So I wrote two down as potential bets, and I kind of like both of these. Mr. Body Language himself, Kucherov at plus 450, which seems insane to me. Like he's gonna put up numbers
And he's
at
right up there
almost
every year.
at almost 5-1. Whenever McDavid doesn't win a scoring title, Kucherov does. Like he's the guy. And then my other one, a little further down, and I know we're all up in Vegas, but Jack Eichel plus 2,200. Like these are worth throwing $5 on.
Those are some nice futures. I had Marner as my pick. That was my bold prediction, so I got to stick with that. But I think Marner and Eichel are going to be right there, kind of like a Draisaitl and McDavid in terms of the points totals. And yeah, you never count Kucherov out. What about the Rocket Richard Trophy for most goals?
So Draisaitl's the favorite at 310, but this is one I am 100% betting. Tage Thompson is plus 22 to win the Rocket Richard Trophy, and I believe he only finished 5 behind Draisaitl last year.
And he played most of the season at center, and as soon as they moved him over to the wing, he started scoring at a higher pace. And actually, Tage Thompson had the most 5-on-5 goals out of anybody in the league last year. So if Buffalo can get their power play clicking, that's a good bet. I had Austin Matthews written down, not exactly going out on a limb there, but I think the picture, and he's clearly now the top dog there. He's fully healthy again. He's in the prime of his career. You know, it's hard to see him not having another huge year.
Yeah, no, I like that one too. I couldn't believe that Thompson was that high after almost scoring 50.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. What about the Norris Trophy?
So Makar was plus 145. Quinn Hughes was plus 210, which it's probably either of those two guys, but I think Zach Werenski at plus 1,000 is worth a look. Like, I mean, he was right there last year. If those two guys didn't have the years that they did, he probably wins it going away. So it's probably Makar or Hughes again, but it's not out of the question that Werenski could have another awesome year like last year and be right there.
Yeah, that seems to be the best value out there. It's hard for anybody to make an argument that Makar's not going to be the best defenseman in the league for the next 5 or 6 years. Quinn Hughes, fairly close second, but it's kind of like LeBron, how they, he could have won the MVP, a lot more, but you get a little fatigue of the same guy winning it every year. So I kind of not noted down Quinn Hughes, just more on the Makar fatigue.
Yeah.
What about the Selke things? Obviously Barkov was like the number one guy going down for the season.
So oddly enough, the next best odds now that Barkov's out was actually Sam Reinhart at plus 210. But my bet on this one is Leon Draisaitl at plus 500, who kind of should have been in the running for it last year and kind of got robbed a little bit. And he's already talked about that's something that he wants to sort of aim for this year, becoming a complete 200-foot guy. And at plus 500 for a guy who is going to be on the ice a ton seems like a decent value bet.
Yeah, I think those are the two guys, right? Like Sam Reinhart was nominated for it last year. That's kind of crazy to have two guys one guy win it and another guy nominated. So with Barkov going down, you got to think Sam Reinhart's gonna, take the baton and try to fill that void. And he was already doing it last year, so he's gonna be counted on that role even more this year. When Leon puts his mind to something, I'm not going to bet against him either. He's definitely got the size and the skating to be a powerhouse defensively. So I think it's a bit of a coin flip between those two. You go with the odds with Draisaitl and the value. So I like your thinking there. All right, let's round it out with the Calder Trophy.
So
Demidov, obviously the odds-on favorite to give Montreal back-to-back Calder Trophy winners. But do you have
yeah,
any better value picks there?
so it's not even close. Like the next guy would be Booyum at plus 1200. But if you want to just, take a shot at somebody else, I had Jimmy Snuggerud down at plus 1700. Another guy who's going to get tons of opportunity. And you never know, an injury happens and all of a sudden the field's wide open.
Yeah, I like that pick. The other guy I had jotted down, which was like a real long shot, is Isaac Howard, but only because I think if he ends up making the team, he could
It's going to
get some
score.
power play minutes. He could, you never know who he gets playing with, but he's got the lethal
Got the
shot
shot.
and the offensive capabilities to make an immediate impact on a really good team. But he's got to make the team first, which is not
Guaranteed.
guaranteed. All right. Well, yeah, so those are some interesting odds. I'm definitely going to have to put some futures bets down. Some of those long shots would be kind of fun to track. We're down to it now, Charlie. Our Stanley Cup predictions. We've covered all the teams. We've predicted the awards, but there's the big one left. We had the double matchup, back-to-back matchups of Edmonton and Florida the last 2 years. Where do you see things going this year?
All right. I don't want to freak anybody out, but I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are beating the Dallas Stars in the Stanley Cup Finals this year. I just think the Leafs are going to have a better identity. They probably make one more move before the playoffs. They're going to get away from the soft shit, play a little more heavy hockey. Obviously, health is going to depend on all this, but I think if Stolars can stay healthy, I think if he would have stayed healthy, they probably would have had a good run last year, but I just think this team might actually do it this year.
Yeah, I like it. I've kind of went a slightly different direction, but I could definitely see that happening. I went with the Avalanche and the Hurricanes for my matchup. Colorado was a period away from putting out Dallas last year, and then who knows what would have happened. They're fully loaded. Like I see an MVP year, like you mentioned, out of McKinnon, and of course we all know what McCarr can do. On the East, I think Carolina just gets it done this year. I like the extra pieces that they've added. I think they're going to take advantage of a little bit of a beat up Panthers team that's ground down from 2 long playoff runs. They're going to take that experience and get the job done. The Leafs will definitely be a tough out, but ultimately, yeah, I'm picking Colorado and Carolina in the finals.
All right.
Okay, so we're on the home stretch here. Back to our trivia question. The question to you is, which Russian player has the second most career goals?
All right. So I narrowed this down to two guys, and I think they're both sort of obvious, which leads me to believe I may be wrong. But I'm going to go with the Russian Rocket, Pavel Bure.
No, good guess. I believe he was fourth, including
Fourth.
Ovechkin. Yeah, there's
Okay.
two
So
guys
my
that are their names and they're only second and third are only separated by 10 goals.
okay. So then my second guess was Sergei Fedorov.
Yes.
Yay!
Nicely
I got
done.
one.
Yeah. 483 goals for Fedorov, and then McGillney came in at 473. And then I think Bure and Kovalchuk were the next two on the list. I
Okay.
think Bure would have done it, but he just didn't play long enough. Where both Fedorov and McGillney were pushing 20-year careers, so they had a little more time to get it done. Good work. You got that on the second guess. I think that's the
Yeah.
first time one of us has actually got the
Yeah.
trivia question right. So, okay, we're wrapping things up. That was a couple of marathon episodes, but CHL season is already underway, and you're going to a game in a few days, so that'll be fun. Who are you going to see?
Yeah, we're going to see the Brantford Bulldogs against the Windsor Spitfires, two of the easily top 4 teams in the OHL, so it should be a good game. It's my first time going to the Brantford arena, so we're looking forward to it.
And the Spitfires have a guy that I believe is like third or fourth on the draft rankings for this year?
Yeah, both these teams are absolutely loaded with future NHL prospects, so it should be a pretty intense matchup.
Nice. Well, I am off to Italy in the next week, so I'll be gone there for a couple of weeks, enjoying some cannolis and some pasta.
I got a question for you. So when you go to these European trips and that, and there's obviously beaches and that, do you go in the water? Because I know you always had a fear of oceans and for some reason a fear of jellyfish, which blows my mind because the closest body of water to us was the co-op pond. How you develop a fear of jellyfish?
I'll be honest, I don't love going in the ocean. I don't know where the jellyfish thing came from. I guess they're just kind of like the silent killers. They just kind of like, you don't see them, they float up there. But there's something about the ocean that's always kind of terrified me, the depths and the deep abyss. But I'll splash around in it. I definitely won't go in like where it's over my head. You know, it's actually funny because Sarah lived in Australia for a while and was really big into the snorkeling. So we went snorkeling the one time we were in the Dominican, and I had a shitty funnel or snorkel thing, and it got started filling up with water, and I was freaking out, and so I did not like that experience. So we may try a little snorkeling. I think she's keen to get me back out there, but mostly I'll go in up to my waist in the ocean. I guess it's the Mediterranean in this case, but I'm definitely more of a swimming pool guy. But this year we're going to Sicily, and we're definitely doing more the beach towns, kind of a laid back vibe. Last time we went to like Rome and Florence, did all the kind of the landmarks and the touristy stuff. So this time's gonna meant to be more chill, laid back, kind of open itinerary, and spending a longer time in some cool beach towns there. So it'll be fun. I'll be getting in the Mediterranean, but yeah, I definitely won't be going for long swims into the deep waters. That's for sure.
So jellyfish and sitting, the silent killers.
Exactly. Yes. So, but yeah, so we'll be gone for a couple weeks. So we'll hopefully these season preview episodes keep everybody entertained for a bit. You'll have some clips to work with to put out on the socials. So that'll be good. And then I'll be excited to get back and talk to you with our next episode. We'll have a few weeks of regular season action to break down. A little NCAA will be underway, so it'll be fun to check in there. And I'm sure all of the Airbnbs we got in Sicily will have the center ice package, so I'll be able to keep up on everything there.
Oh,
But
that's awesome.
anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in to our NHL regular season previews. That was a blast, kind of researching that and breaking it all down with you, Charlie. So now we just wait for the games to start and watch the season unfold. So until then, we'll talk to you guys soon in a couple weeks, and enjoy the games.